just been trying to pick up, like, I don't know how or why, the clearance section of half-price books.
Mm-hmm.
It probably tells you how the wind's blowing, but movies, CDs, everything for like $1 or $2, like in their clearance section.
Right.
Not like obviously not on their wall.
Yeah, there's a clearance vinyl section too, where they're usually 50 cents.
It's insane, like the way digital media has kind of just laid waste to actual print.
Yeah,
eventually, like we're looking at these comic books and these books, and eventually it's probably going to be like nostalgia worth something. My wife's got that. Did you ever see that radio that's in there?
No.
Stand up and look at the radio across from the Christmas tree right there.
Oh wow, very nice, man. Yeah, I restored these. I restored a few of them. I got a project one right now. I had to pause for a second, but I'm about to get back on that one. Those are awesome, dude. Is it 2 radio?
It's a AM radio, and although I did say Christmas tree, this episode's dropping on January 30th.
Yes.
Episode number 16, wherein we're going to talk about the Swamp Thing. Back to the radio, though. That was my wife's father's dad's. The radio in there and the desk. His dad was a pharmacist. If you look at the dial, it's AM radio from the 1930s, and it's tuned to Waco.
Okay.
So it's got a couple little places, like if you pull the dial and dial it, it's got a little drop in. The radio itself is tuned to what was available on Waco AM radio in the 30s.
Okay.
It's pretty neat. I want to have it restored. Looked into it. It's a couple few $100.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Pretty neat.
Yeah, I got a cool one that I need to finish up right now. It's old Magnavox, way back in the day. It's got a cherry cabinet and stuff. It has a phonograph. I'm gonna take a more modern record player and drop it in there, and just to update it a little bit. And you can update them to where you can actually put them in stereo and everything. There's a lot of cool things you can do with them.
We talked to a lady. There's actually in the little
I know they all vintage sounds.
She knows vintage sounds. She said that they put a little thing in there. I don't even know if it's attached or if it's just attached to the AM dial, where it's like a little MP3.
Yeah.
So it's not actually inside your radio, so it doesn't mess up your
components or anything.
Your componentry, but so I want to look into that. I think it'd be neat.
Yeah. They
I like old tube. I like old tube radio stuff.
I've always wanted to build a tube amplifier, but they're not cheap. Those are some expensive things, but the warm sound and everything, they're pretty awesome. But looking at a couple of $grand for a basic one,
And that's I have a tube amp in my closet that I used to play on my guitar.
Okay.
And it's kind of a solid state tube combo, but the tube sound is so much warmer.
Yeah.
But hey, guys, this is not the music episode. We'll get into that in the future. Like I said before, this is episode number 16. We're going to talk about the Swamp Thing. I don't know if most of you know that my partner here.
Yes.
His call sign is the Swamp Thing. And we've been talking about doing an episode for a while about the Swamp Thing. So here it is, episode 16. This is where we're going to talk about the Swamp Thing, Scotty,
yes,
Scarydad Swamp Thing, and
we're going to talk about
the swamp. We're going to talk about things.
Yes.
So join us, sit back and listen. This is where the sponsor spot is going to go. So we're going to do a little trial sponsor spot. Hello, local business and or individual who sells things. Sell your goods and or services on Scarydad.com. You can have us announce, or you can announce yourself and just give us a little piece of audio to clip into this section of the podcast. You do that and give us some money, and we'll put it there, and everybody will be happy. And now we're back.
Yes.
Whatever our sponsor was for that little clip,
We thank you for sponsoring the show.
Thank you for sponsoring the show. You guys go to that website, you buy whatever it was they were advertising.
And we don't recommend any product unless we've actually used it.
That's true. Now it's time to get into our history segment. This is a long one, so I'm going to just kind of hit the high points.
Okay.
I don't know if we really want to go into each one individually. I don't know.
You can combine some of them.
So basically, on this date in 1649, King Charles I of England was beheaded by a whole bunch of anti-royalists headed by Oliver Cromwell. On this date in 1661, Oliver Cromwell was ritually executed on the anniversary of Charles's death.
Now, by ritually, we have a little twist to this particular execution.
Cromwell himself died of natural causes, but the royalists had him dug up and hung in chains and beheaded because they didn't like what he did to their beloved Charles.
They wanted him to die twice.
Okay, on this date in 1703, the 47 Ronin avenged the death of their master. And this one I will take a couple minutes to talk about. A couple years ago, a movie called The 47 Ronin came out and it had Keanu Reeves in it, and it was all magical. Have you seen that?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it though.
I refuse to watch that. That's sacrilege. It's really bad. So what happened in the 47 Ronin story is that basically what a Ronin is a samurai without a master. Okay, and what a samurai is, think in like medieval England of a noble who has a knight. Knights listen to the nobles command the knights. Samurais follow what's called a daimyo, or I could be misspeaking, but essentially a noble commands the samurai.
Yeah.
If a noble is killed and a samurai is left masterless, he becomes a Ronin. Okay?
Okay.
So in 1703, or actually in 1702, these samurai, their master was unjustly he was insulted at a party, and whenever he took the bait, it insulted. There was intrigue and insult, and he was forced to commit seppuku, which is harikari, which is the ritual. He has to cut his own guts and take them out and lay them on a napkin before he's beheaded. And it was unjust. It was the law because he was up against a higher head than himself, but it was still wrong. The 47 Ronin were left masterless. They pretended to scatter to the wind, but ultimately they built this conspiracy. They came back and they ended up killing the guy who caused the death of their master.
Okay.
And they ended up, because after they killed the guy, they ended up just turning themselves in. And they themselves were forced to commit ritual suicide as execution. And in Japan's samurai code, basically, if you were sentenced to death, if you were offered the opportunity to kill yourself rather than be killed, it saved your honor and allowed you to continue on. This movie with Keanu Reeves was all like magic and dragons and crap. And I've read several different versions of this 47 Ronin story, and it is extremely tragic, and it's extremely brilliant and extremely heroic. And watching the previews for this Keanu Reeves movie is imagining like if like China was to release a big budget movie about the Alamo,
right,
and have it full of dragons and lasers and lightsabers.
It would offend a few people.
And you'd be like, no, that's not right at all. Yeah, that's what Hollywood does. That's crap. They take things that people love and they shit on them.
Yeah, it's sad the way they do that with a lot of stories. That's why I haven't seen Deepwater Horizon yet. I was kind of close to that particular story itself, and I don't want to see what Hollywood's going to do to it.
So anyway, on a lighter note, on this date, January 30th of 1933, our good old friend, who seems to just pop into this history segment way too often, Our friend Adolf Hitler was sworn in as the Chancellor of Germany. This is a horror podcast, but god damn it, if that fucker doesn't just pop into almost every other week, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yes.
He's been in at least 3 different ones.
Yeah.
All right. So, current events, 1948, January 30th, Mahatma Gandhi is assassinated. 1968 was the Tet Offensive in Vietnam.
Yes.
1969 was the Beatles' not first, but the final public performance. Fucking on this day in 1972, Bloody Sunday, British soldiers shot 26 unarmed civilians during the protest march. 14 people were killed. A U2 mega hit was born.
Yes. We actually used to at the bar I bounced at in college. We had Sunday Bloody Sunday. We have every week.
Notable births. Gene Hackman played Lex Luthor.
Yes, and so many other movies, man. Gene Hackman's an excellent actor.
1951, Phil Collins of Genesis fame.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why
And
that's
Phil Collins
scary,
fame.
but it's there.
Those puppets in those videos were just creepy.
1974, Mr. Christian Bale. Okay,
Yes.
That gets scary. You've seen American Psycho.
Yes. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yes, I have.
So, that's the history segment. We did kind of skip it over like rocks over a stream. I mean, goddamn, any one of these things could have been a podcast in and of itself.
Right.
But, I don't know what it is, man. It's like people go crazy in wintertime. In the fall, we were struggling. I was scraping up some stuff to talk about. I was like, well, this is not even
It's the
remotely
cold weather,
related,
man.
but
It's the cold weather.
people get bored. They get cabin fever. They turn into Jack Nicholson. All right, so I'm sitting here with Swamp Thing.
Yes.
His name's inspired by the Swamp Thing. You guys should be aware of the Swamp Thing. If you're not, you're going to be walking away from here totally educated in the Swamp Thing lore. I'm going to pass it over to Scotty here. What is it about the Swamp Thing? What is the Swamp Thing? Where did it come from? What's... This is hard-boiled news.
Yes.
Tell me about the Swamp Thing.
The Swamp Thing. The Swamp Thing first appeared in House of Secrets 92. Was it in 68, I believe it was?
1971.
71. Okay, so 1971, House of Secrets 92. Lord, it was a little bit off. Let me get another beer. And he made his debut there. The House of Secrets 92 was a book that used to have a couple of short stories in it, and he was in the lead short story, that particular issue.
And we've talked about these old DC and Marvel horror comics in the past. And for those of you who are not necessarily comic book fans, comic books in the 60s and 70s are different from the way they are today in that most comic books, superhero comics, monster comics, horror comics, whatever, generally had 2 to 3 stories per comic. A minimum of 2, probably 3 or 4. And they were always relatively short stories.
Yeah.
And always different writers, different artists. And the Swamp Thing, House of Secrets is one of those horror comics that existed that had several stories. House of Secrets number 92 is notable, honestly, only because it's the first appearance of the Swamp Thing.
Right.
Swamp Thing was brought about by
Well, the story was Lynn Wein.
Lynn Wein and drawn by Bernie Wrightson.
Right.
And you guys have heard us talk about Bernie Wrightson before.
He is my Stan Lee. He has a very excellent career that's spanning not just with Swamp Thing, but he's worked on a lot of different major titles. He's done a lot of work for Heavy Metal Magazine. Even did a little bit of work for Ghostbusters, the first Ghostbusters movie. He's been around for a while. An incredibly talented guy. Just a great imagination, a great mind, and he does. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was one of his best works. He did the drawings for a version of that back in 1983. He's been around for a while. He's still doing it. He did all the illustrations for A Cycle of the Werewolf, which is the Stephen King book that Silver Bullet comes from. Yeah.
For what it's worth, if you look at an old 70s horror comic, if Bernie Wrightson didn't draw it, whoever did draw it was trying to make whatever it was they were drawing look like Bernie Wrightson drew it. It's very stylistic, or I don't want to say stylistic. He's got a signature look.
Yeah, I could pick out a Bernie cover pretty quick.
He's extremely detailed for comics at the time. Very, very textured, very dark, very very real.
Very good use of shadows.
And like I said, if other people are drawing horror comics, contemporaries of Bernie were trying to look like him. So that's that. And I will post some pictures of some Bernie Wrightson art that's, either iconic or maybe even not so, just some panels.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain books that I have that he has signed for me and everything, but a lot of people don't put a lot of value into him or don't care for him very much. But Captain Sterling, which was his bit in the heavy metal movie back in the day, he's Captain Stern, Lord. He did the drawings for that, the original animation. He had a Gargoyle series that he came out with in the 80s also. I got those. I love his work.
Have you ever seen Creepshow? He did the drawing and he did the adaptation for Creepshow.
Him and Stephen King, actually, they're close friends. Stephen King does a lot of forwards for some of Bernie's books, and Bernie does the same thing for him.
And like we mentioned, Lynn Wein at the beginning, he's a comic writer. He's no slouch himself. I mean, right. Swamp Thing really was kind of a super group. Lynn Wein co-created Wolverine. Everybody's favorite Wolverine. Nightcrawler, Storm, Colossus. He's kind of a heavy hitter in the in the comics industry as well. So Swamp Thing did not come from bastard roots, even though he grew out of a plant in the swamp.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was born in 1971 in House of Secrets number 92.
In that original story, while it wasn't exact to what their origin developed into, it was pretty close. And it was the thing about that initial story had a lot of mystery to it. You had the framework was set. The swamp monster comes back to protect his love, and he was murdered by the person that was trying to kill his love. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden he shows up, but he's not a man anymore. He's a monster. And he's able to save her, but at the same time she doesn't know who he is because he's a monster now. So he has to disappear once again back into the swamp. And bam, it just stops there. And I guess, a lot of times they pick these stories to turn into their own series by how popular they were. And people just really wanted to learn more about the Swamp Thing and see what the background was on
it. So the short origin story of the Swamp Thing is that you have a Dr. Alex
was originally was Alex.
Alec Holland is a doctor. He's creating a essentially scientific goop that, for lack of a better word, resurrects plant life.
Yeah. Not
necessarily resurrects, but enhances
it
and brings it back and makes it better than it was before. He has attacked his, in some stories it's his wife, and others it's his sister, but he's attacked, set on fire, and doused in this chemical that he has created. He falls into the swamp and rises again as a Swamp Thing, which is a big man cover, like hulking looking human figure that's covered and is able to manipulate
plant life. Yeah, that's one thing that the original movie kind of left out was his ability to manipulate plant life. In the movie, he was just a plant that could regenerate himself. But in the series that came out in USA Network, they kind of went back to his ability to manipulate plants, and they had some really great kills in that television series. Man, it was really, really cool. But yeah, that's one part. People that aren't familiar with the comic book, that have only seen the first movie, they don't realize that he can. He's like a part of the biostructure.
Right.
He can manipulate other plant life.
So the movie, 1971 was Swamp Thing's first appearance. 1983 was the movie, the feature film, and which actually was directed by Wes Craven.
Yes.
Which you're listening to a horror podcast, so you should know Wes Craven pretty well. But if you don't know, Wes Craven brought us Nightmare on Elm Street,
yes,
and Scream, and many, many others. And Wes Craven was directing Swamp Thing, which I think was originally intended to be a little bit more like comic book kid friendly, but it had Wes Craven at the helm, so it was a little bit. I remember being a kid and Swamp Thing being pretty damn scary.
Yeah, it was an intense one.
I remember 3 scenes in particular, which is essentially the resurrection scene from being a kid. I watched it recently, and I'm like, oh man! But where they kill the kid, and he brings him back, and they kill the girl, and he brings her back, and then the guy who is forced to drink the serum and turns into the possum under the table.
That scene always creeped me out. It reminded me of Dr. Zhivago, and because that movie creeped me out just with the creatures he was making. But yeah, that he's right here in this. That was just weird, man. When he jumped up on the table, that scared the hell out of me when I was a kid.
I mean, I remember being a little kid and just like, oh my god.
Now, this particular annual right here is the film adaptation.
Okay. I was looking at this picture and like, that looks familiar.
Yeah.
Looks like I just saw that shit.
Yeah, so like I said, this is the actual film adaptation from that movie in '83. And you see this is where the one kill that he has with the guy with the bandana. And Adrienne Barbeau was perfect in that role, man. She was awesome in that movie. Can you not enjoy her?
That was one of those, and we talked about it in our Christmas movies, and 70s movies were hard boiled. 80s movies were harder boiled. It seemed to me that everything was just there was a ton of unnecessarily naked people and a fuckload of cuss words in like every 80s movie. Well, if you watch a movie like The Goonies, those kids cuss like crazy.
Yeah.
That's Steven Spielberg, Pirate Rant. That's Steven Spielberg. That's Richard Donner. I mean, that's Lethal Weapon meets Jaws. I mean, come on. I mean, Steven Spielberg's never really been that low key, but I mean, you got a little like kids romping like Gremlins, scary, mean.
So did you ever see the second Swamp Thing movie?
I didn't.
Okay, did it have a lot later?
Well, actually, I have to say that I probably did. Because when I was watching Swamp Thing the other day, I was waiting to see things that I haven't probably seen in 30-something years that I didn't see. So, I probably have seen it.
The second movie's a lot cornier. You know how at the end of the first movie, Arcane transforms himself, and it's just horrible makeup job. The monster just like pretty much every monster in the second one looks like that.
That's where they ran out of money.
Yeah. Yeah, but they had a lot.
Because Swamp Thing actually, I mean, rubber suit and everything, he actually looks pretty legit.
Well, they have the same actor, same suit, everything else.
No, I'm talking in the first one.
Oh, yeah.
Swamp Thing looks legit. Arcane looks...
It's horrible.
It
looked better in the comic book than it did in the actual movie itself. The series kind of tried to get away from the cheesiness to a certain extent, but, they had to come up with 2 years' worth of Mutations by Arcane, and they started getting a little bit ridiculous on that one also. But the second one, a lot of people haven't seen the second one. It wasn't direct to DVD, of course, because at the time it came out, we didn't have DVDs yet. But that's one you can't find. It's really hard to find. It is on Amazon. You can check it out on there. But it's just compared to the first one, they really screwed up with the second one. It was bad.
So stories aside, storylines and characters aside, what you're wearing? Every time I see you, you're wearing a Swamp Thing shirt.
I got a few of them at home.
What is it about the Swamp Thing himself?
One, he was from Louisiana. That was the big connection originally that I really started enjoying Swamp Thing. Second was because the artwork. Like I said, I like the art of Bernie Wrightson. I had already seen his stuff with some heavy metal covers back in the day that my cousin used to have, and I just fell in line with it, man. He was a brute. I like that type of hero. He had a very dark side. There was a horror connection that was with it, and I like the story. I was growing up in South Louisiana. I used to do a lot of fishing. I wanted to be a herpetologist when I was 10 years old. That was my big thing. I wanted to study snakes. I wanted to just get involved with nature, and Swamp Thing just kind of covered all the bases for me. So, and the story's great.
I've just spent the last several days reading the Saga of the Swamp Thing by Alan Moore.
Yeah.
And,
the 20, I want to say it was 2021, 22 and 23, I picked up at an estate sale. That's how I got back into comic books. It was at an estate sale.
Okay.
And they were in a pile of magazines for 25 cents each. Yeah, that's one of the ones I pulled out earlier. Was one of the ones I got at that particular sale. And that's what got me back into the Swamp Thing comic books. That's why I don't have them all back yet, but I'm slowly but surely getting there.
So you collecting Swamp Thing is like me collecting Sandman.
Yeah.
And just gotta gather them up. And even ancillary stories, like just sidelines.
Yeah.
Like we talked about. We'll take a quick jaunt off of Swamp Thing. We'll talk about Sandman, because I want to do a whole show on Sandman after you read it all. Mm-hmm. But essentially, guys, so if you're familiar with the writer Neil Gaiman, who's a best-selling writer who writes all kinds of wonderful fantasy stories, the story that made his name is Sandman. And Sandman was actually a hard-boiled sort of Batman ancillary in the 40s and 50s. I think he actually came out before Batman. Yeah. But Sandman was a guy somewhat like Batman, but he wore a gas mask, and he would fight crime, and he would hit people with a sleep aid and make them fall asleep. And he'd tie them up. And he wore a trench coat and a hat, and he was very 1940s hard-boiled detective. In the late 80s, a falling apart DC Comics gave a young upcoming writer, Neil Gaiman, his own title. He gave him Sandman to revamp. Mm-hmm. And most other writers would have taken that guy and rebuilt him and made him into
modern day hero.
Neil Gaiman actually rewrote essentially the whole concept of human mythology, like gods and goddesses and eternals and the like. Mm-hmm. And Golden Age Sandman appears once or twice, but mostly it's these elementals.
Yeah.
That is the story that has driven me pretty much ever since I discovered it back in the day. All of the Swamp Thing, Bernie Wrightson, the horror comics, the House of Secrets, the House of Mystery, all of this stuff is encompassed in that same mythology. Mm-hmm. And so, although I've always, I saw Swamp Thing when I was a kid. I've always loved Swamp Thing. I've never followed Swamp Thing comics like story to story. Yeah. Just because there's so many characters you have to follow. At some point, you just have to.
Yeah, pick a side.
You gotta pick a few and then just read them. I've only just now started getting back into Swamp Thing. I'm like, oh my god, I forgot how cool this shit was. That was a long way around. If I find a story that's got a Sandman character in it, I buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though this story doesn't have anything to do with the Sandman story, if the yellow costume Sandman from the 1970s, that was a mini series that had nothing to do with anything, I'll grab it. Same thing. You got House of Secrets over there. You got Swamp Thing. You got Annuals. You've got.
I got his appearance with Superman. I have one with Batman. He was in Two Brave and the Bold with Batman. Well, I got one from you tonight, and I had the other one already. Any crossover with Swamp Thing where he's involved in it, I go ahead and grab it. And any other this is a cool book right here. I actually had Bernie sign this one this year, but it's the retelling of the origin, which is pretty cool. Because it delves more into the, how it kind of in 20 it kind of popped up where he was actually an avatar of the green and stuff. This involves that a little bit more in the original origin telling. So yeah, and Swamp Thing related, I enjoyed it a lot. Like I said, I got a connection to it.
And when he's talking about the avatar of the green, what we're talking about is originally it was Alex Holland that he was doused in the chemicals and he fell into the swamp, and he was kind of imbued with
he was
swamp.
Physically changed.
He became a man plant thing that he was a man with plant powers. Alan Moore, who you may know from such titles as Batman, The Killing Joke, The Watchmen,
yes,
and so many others, Saga of the Swamp Thing. Alan Moore took comic characters and he took them to a different level. And Alan Moore is responsible for the Batman we know today, the Joker that we know today. A lot of the serious adult-themed comic book characters that we know is a lot of Alan Moore from the 80s, taking things seriously when nobody else was. Mm-hmm. He took over the Swamp Thing in the early 80s, and in his story, essentially, instead of Alec Holland surviving as the Swamp Thing, he died. And it was the plant material around him that absorbed his personality.
Yep.
So rather than being a man who survived as a plant, he's a plant who becomes a man with memories of a dead man inside of him. He's an elemental, which, in all honesty, is so much more interesting.
Yeah. Because
all comic books are somebody who gets blasted by radiation and becomes more than himself. The Swamp Thing that Alan Moore created was so much more tragic and so much more. Once he realized he was attempting to regain humanity, that was a driving force behind the Swamp Thing. Once he realized that he was never even human, then he had nowhere to go. It was a whole different story.
Right.
Which you'd think, okay, well, that's the end of it. He just goes sinks down in the swamp. No, now he's got so many other things to do.
Yeah. And that's what's interesting is with the New 52, where they take it to is all of a sudden, Alec Holland, he's allowed to be resurrected and come back as a human. But he also retains some of the memories from the Swamp Thing. And it leads to his confusion. He's trying to figure out, why do I have these memories? Why is this still haunting me? Who is this person? I don't know what to do. And that's when another avatar comes up and says, hey, this is the deal. I am also, this is who I was. And I became part of the swamp as well. So it's like sometimes people are chosen because of their connection with the green to become an avatar, to protect the swamp. And it's like, you were chosen for this. And that's what Alec has to, should I go back to being the green? What should I do?
Should I go back to being the Swamp Thing?
Yeah.
Because in the saga of, where he takes over Gotham City and kicks Batman's ass, have you gotten that far yet?
Yep.
I'm sorry, but I gotta say, like, if I had that much power, I just would just continue on. He was using it to try to get Abby out of jail.
Yep.
I would have just kept on. I mean, he's building like monster avatars and then just like bouncing out of them and going into a flower bed, letting everybody shooting at the. It was great. It's good stuff.
It turns into just an incredible story. I mean, it just. Even Bernie said that the direction it went into, once he was gone, and it just kept, it just became just this huge thing. Though it's a beautiful story, man.
From notes earlier, it says that this is the first comic approached from a literary standpoint that also addressed ecological concerns. So, yeah, he's from the Green.
Mm-hmm.
He's taking on basically the world. I mean, there's bad guys, there's good guys. I mean, he fights Batman's left and right.
Well, the series really took off on that aspect. For example, this is one of the figures from the. This comes from the series on USA Network. This was Weed Killer. This is one of Arcane's creatures that he came up with, and basically to destroy plant life. And Swamp Thing he even had PSAs that he did about littering and about littering.
That's interesting. So when did that movie come, or that show? That was like in the 90s?
This was in the early 90s, yeah. It lasted for 2 seasons.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard of a thing called permaculture?
No.
Okay, so basically what permaculture is a design science sort of built around agricultural principles. Was essentially established in the 60s, but is only just now kind of catching up. And it's I want to say it's like a back to the earth movement, but at the same time it's more realizing that nature takes care of itself. Like anytime humans remove themselves from nature takes over and fixes itself and reestablishes itself. So some of the places, for example, that have been completely just annihilated by nuclear nature has come in and cleaned itself. They said, that will be unlivable for 1,000 years. Nature take care of it.
It's a very powerful force.
Right. So essentially permaculture is a design science where you use use nature to enhance nature. So if you say you got weed killer, the idea behind permaculture is, okay, if you've got weeds, why are there weeds? What is the purpose of weeds in nature? If you have dandelions, for example, dandelions have a deep taproot. They like hard, compacted soils. Dandelions don't typically grow in lush, fertile soils. They grow in places that...
You can't grow anything else.
Right. Nature sends dandelions... I mean, not sins like as if a god, but like, think of the green. Dandelion seeds land on fertile soils and they won't grow. They land on compacted soils, they grow very well. They send their taproots down. They bring minerals up. They fertilize the soil. This is, without you pulling them up, this is just what they do. In other words, if you've got dandelions, you've got shitty soil. So going out and spraying weed killer on dandelions is not making your ground better.
It's temporary.
All it does is kill the plant. It doesn't fix the problem.
Yeah.
The problem is that you've got compacted soils in which are artificially sustained, but it takes a couple cycles for it to work. When we first moved here, because I learned about this principle, and I have little tiny children. My little one wasn't even born yet, but my other one was. She's rolling around in the grass. I'm like, man, I don't want her rolling around in fertilizer and bug killer and herbicide and whatever else. Like, I don't care if we have weeds. I just don't want her rolling around in that shit. So I told my wife, I was like, okay, because I heard about these permaculture principles. So no inputs other than organic fertilizers, no poisons, no herbicides, none of that stuff. We got weeds out the ass. It's like, if you don't want the weeds, go pull them, but we're not putting chemicals down. Just don't do it. First year, super weeds. Second year, not so many weeds. Now, third, fourth, and coming under the fifth year, we have the lushest grass on our street. No weeds. No poisons.
Right.
So, I don't know. I don't know if you ever heard the George Carlin thing, where he's like, sometimes I think maybe the meaning of life is that the planet needed plastic. That's why we're here. Plastic. Because it couldn't make it on its own.
Right.
We don't need weed killer.
There's natural ways to nature,
If weeds are there, if undesirable plants are there,
there's a reason they're there.
There's a reason they're there. It's because you made a hospitable environment for them. So sometimes maybe the swamp thing is actually talking to us from the green.
Well, yeah, nature's a very powerful force. I don't deny the fact that it does see what's happening. It does, step up its game, I guess you could say, to repair itself. It's pretty awesome. I mean, look at the Grand Canyon. That's the force of nature causing stuff like that. It can dig a huge ditch through rock.
Wasn't that the plates moved?
Yeah, but there's also some erosion. There's
a lot of erosion. I mean, that's flowing.
Yes.
No. The Grand Canyon, no, that was not an earthquake. I mean, I'm talking. That was massive erosion.
Yeah.
But that whole area was an ocean. That was just a deep water part of it.
Right. Yeah. So
this guy wears that on his head.
Yeah. That was one of Arcane's minions from the series.
I love looking at the old price tags. KB, 3 for $10.
I was looking at some stuff that I listed today for, I want to say it was $20 each, and they had 99-cent clearance stickers on them. I'm like, yeah, that was a long time ago.
Those were 1990. I remember these. Hanging on the wall. Wow. Man, you get the nostalgia. Evil unmin figures.
So Swamp Thing just continues on to this day with a new 52. And one thing that we have to talk about when we talk about Swamp Thing is Man-Thing, which was Marvel's answer to the Swamp Thing. And what I love about, right here I have number 1 Man-Thing, number 1 Swamp Thing. This is the first startling issue. He is the most startling swamp creature ever.
So what's the date on this Man-Thing?
I'm trying to remember. Wasn't it 72? It wasn't too long before. We could open it up. Pop it out.
Yeah, old, I believe Man-Thing hit before Swampy.
Yeah, few months before. As far as the...
oh, shit, that was 1973.
73, okay. Yeah, the House of Secrets was first. The Swamp Thing appeared first. The Man-Thing did an appearance in Howard the Duck. And then he came out with his own series. I mean, it was like months before. This particular Swamp Thing number 1 is... it's got to be before 1973. This was October 72. November 72, I'm sorry. You see. And you know a little bit about the history behind these two characters already.
Well, I know that Lin Wayne actually wrote a Man-Thing story while Swamp Thing was still kicking around in his head. And that both of them were, Lin Wayne and Wrightson were both concerned that Swamp Thing might be perceived as a Man-Thing ripoff.
Mm-hmm.
But that Marvel didn't pursue anything against Swamp Thing because there was already a character called the Heap that another company had that both Swamp Thing and Man-Thing were sort of a ripoff of.
Right.
And luckily, I don't know, dude. Like, sometimes you go back and you see the popular stuff is, for whatever reason, just advertised correctly. Have you ever read Man-Thing? Is he any good?
It's all right. It's a different storyline. He's just always been Man-Thing. He's a creature that I guess you could say he's kind of elemental because he's a creature that was made by God that befriends a duck. The Howard the Duck is very involved with Man-Thing, and that's kind of why he comes down to Earth and just to people's where all the humans are, and just gets involved in their life. But he's a creature of the swamp also. Yeah, but you can see here this. Initially, he's protecting all the swamp. You got the demons coming after him and everything, and you got Howard the Duck once again. I love Howard the Duck. I do enjoy him. And whenever he was trying to ascend back to the gods, which is cutscene right here, so Howard the Duck gets him to come back. Right here, he's trying to go ahead and ascend back to where he's supposed to be. He wants to bring Howard with him, and Howard gets him to come back. And Man-Thing comes into our realm and decides to go ahead and become a protector of the swamp. And the similarities are just ridiculous. I mean, they are identical.
They're the same character.
Creatures. They have different faces, and that's it.
What's funny about Swamp Thing too is, and it's in that Batman that I escape. Is they keep describing him as a muck-encrusted mockery of humanity, and realizing, this is not the early 70s. So back then they used to, I don't know, like with monsters, they used to, but even if they were sympathetic monsters, they'd be like, this thing sucks so much.
It's still a monster, yeah.
It's full of hair, and its hair grows off the end of its dick, and it sucks. We'll make it a sympathetic character that it's like it's a mockery of humanity. Read the story. Be sympathetic with this poor guy or this new plant who's, thinks it's a man.
Yeah. And it's one, I want to say right here, it's Swamp Thing number 23. When the Avatar started trying, gaining some human form. You can see he's ready to kill Swamp because Swamp Thing was a monster, considered a monster. It's just like you were saying, monsters were bad no matter what they did. And it's just trying to show his human side to protect him from Saber. Back in the day.
Is that volume 123?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So that's before the Alan Moore.
Yes. Yeah, it was before Alan Moore.
Alan Moore. This is important, guys. This is what lets you see, if you like comic books, it lets you see intelligence in them. If you don't like comic books, then you're probably not listening anymore. So, Saga of the Swamp Thing was the first mainstream comic to completely abandon the Comic Code Authority. Because they had... Essentially what it's worth is Alec Holland...
Well, by the time Saga came around, it was Alec.
And Abby Cable were lovers. Abby was married to Matt still, although Matt was in a hospital in a coma.
Mm-hmm.
But Abby was in love with the Swamp Thing. The Swamp Thing was in love with her. They had what you might call relations.
Well, in 2, they delve into that a little bit.
The Comic Code Authority shit a brick, and Alan Moore in DC told the Comic Code Authority to piss up a rope because it was good writing. And the whole Comic Code Authority, for those of you who ever looked at a comic book, you look, there's a little stamp that says approved by the Comics Code Authority.
Yeah.
If you ever think that that's protecting you from something in this modern world, you have to understand the Comics Code Authority was established by a pissed off preacher who was convinced that Batman and Robin were gay sexing it up. And he went to Congress to try to shut down comic books. So the publishers who had money, DC and Marvel, DC, Batman and Robin aren't gay. First of all, this is a children's book, so why would you ever think that? Second of all, we've got money. Watch this. It's called Batwoman and Batgirl. Done. They're not gay. They got girlfriends. What hurt was all the independent publishers that published horror comics and, kind of offbeat stuff that was not necessarily mainstream. They couldn't pay the Comics Code Authority to go away. And even up to including, because House of Mystery was a DC title, but it wasn't a popular one. It wasn't Batman. So House of Mystery went from being a horror comic to being a Martian Manhunter comic for many, many years. Come the 80s, we've got Alan Moore trying to reinvent the genre. DC, everybody told, this is not the 50s.
We don't need to listen to you guys.
We're not worried about Batman and Robin anymore. We're done listening to you. But Swamp Thing was the first major comic to take that stance,
right? Yeah,
to draw that line. That's important. I believe free speech is important, even if you're working for a comic book.
Right. Well, it's like we were speaking earlier. You're going to offend people sometimes. Not everybody's going to enjoy what you're doing.
Exactly. Dude, that's awesome.
That's a cool cover. I like that one a lot. That was an eBay pickup.
Okay, guys, we're going to end the Swamp Thing episode right about here. We're going to keep talking. We're done talking about Swamp Thing because I just noticed there's an autograph over there. We're gonna keep chatting about stuff. The recorder's going to keep running. God damn it, dude! Got Swamp Thing over there.
That's Swamp Thing.
That's a sweet pie right there. The end of her hand looks like she's just been doing something to the Swamp Thing.
Well, no, she's becoming it. She's part of the red.
That's Kelly Jones. I know that artist. That's Sandman artist.
Okay.
That's good stuff. Spoof comics.
I love spoof comics, man.
That's Image?
No. This is spoof. Wait, was spoof Image? I think it was all shoot Image. I think
that's that logo.
Yeah, I see it now. Let's take her out. But yeah,
dude, you got Swamp Thing on a swastika. That's what I'm saying. We're just gonna chat about stuff, guys. You can continue to listen. Okay, here's the thing. We're hitting the end of January. We're about to go meta here, which means we're gonna have our weekly episode. It's probably going to start to go to bi-weekly because every time we get together we talk about too much shit and we end up talking for another hour after we're done and we think, man, we should have recorded that. So for what it's worth, Scarydad news, updates, more. We're trying to build a local movement, what we would call a comic convention. But it's not a comic convention, it's a horror convention. Imagine a horror convention where you show up and half of it is vendors and, you can buy fun horror shit from Frankenstein on up to Ouija boards. The other half of it's going to be haunters, where you can either buy materials for your Halloween haunt. You can buy, consulting, or you can just go to a tutorial and learn how to do stuff that maybe you wanted to learn how to do, but we're putting a team together off of our excuse me, I continually need to cough. I'm going to let Scott take over for just a second.
Okay, no worries. The movement we're trying to start is just from our following, the people that enjoy, people that we have a common interest in, that we have a like mindset, just to get a group of folks that want to, be able to have a weekend where other folks that would like minds can get together, share ideas. People that may have been thinking about different things they want to do involving horror, whether it be decorating for Halloween or doing some writing, what kind of stuff they should be reading in order to really enjoy the horror genre. Just get us all together for a weekend and just to be able to share ideas and all move forward. Just folks with a common interest that want to see this movement expand.
We're gonna try to. We're gonna get a place that's big enough to house all of us heathens. We'll do a live podcast at the place. We're gonna have to charge an admission. We need to make some money. We're gonna put it all together to where basically vendors plus haunters plus attendees equal everybody's out about $5 or $10 and everybody's happy.
Everybody's happy. They're able to still have a good time and attend. And
I want a whole shitload of money. I always think if I won the lottery and I was Oprah rich, I'd just open a big ass convention center like that and make it a daily occurrence. But I can't do that. So you're gonna have to pay $5, $10, whatever it is. We're gonna try to look in maybe I don't know, May or June to try to do our first event. We're gonna make it we're going to be smart about what we build. But if you're interested in this sort of thing, like, comment, share, just let us know. And we know you're out there. Just push the buttons. We're going to build it. You will come.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the Swamp Thing episode. We're done. Stay scary. The music's coming soon. So anyway, fucking swastika, dude.
Yeah. That's one issue I haven't actually gotten to yet. This was this one I picked that one up, I want to say about 2 months ago. But I had to get it.
You still got those Hellblazers?
Oh, yeah. I put together another run, actually, yesterday. I got plenty of Hellblazers.
Yeah, I want to grab those Hellblazers from you. We didn't even mention it in the episode, but Constantine,
yes. He grew from Swamp Thing.
Made his first appearance in Swamp Thing.
Saga Swamp Thing 37, if I'm not mistaken, was the issue. Yep, which I used to have, but I've been trying to get it again, but the price has gone up so much on that particular issue that I don't see me getting it anytime soon.
Do you think people are buying it to read?
Investors. I can almost guarantee it.
Investing in what? In a story you're not going to read?
Yeah, well, in the
in paper.
The offshoot chance that the next movie or whatever they come out with is going to gain so much popularity, they'll be able to resell the book. And
you didn't think Keanu Reeves did a good enough job?
I think he did. I've heard he's going to be in the next one.
Really?
Yep.
I'm not a big fan of Keanu.
As far as acting, I would have picked a different person myself, but he kind of made the movie his own. So I enjoyed it. I love the movie Constantine.
I enjoyed the movie, almost in spite of him.
Yeah.
I don't know. You always have those things like, which actors would you have thrown in there? Keanu Reeves and British accents. Constantine
Should have had a British accent.
Should have.
Keanu Reeves is one of those actors like Tom Cruise, where he doesn't change himself for a role. It's Keanu Reeves as this person. Or this person as Keanu Reeves, I should say.
Well, Tom Cruise as Lestat was not good either.
No.
Yeah, 18th century French guy who has a Hollywood accent.
Yeah. But every movie role Tom Cruise is in, he's the same person.
Oh, yeah.
He's the same, except for his best acting, in my opinion, was still Tropic Thunder.
That's because it wasn't him.
It wasn't him. He was being somebody else, finally.
He was sarcastically being somebody else, and it stuck. I believe that guy.
And I honestly love that role by Tom Cruise.
Hey, guys. Take care.
Earth really needs you.